You're listening to a new episode of The Brave Technologist, and this one features James Massa, who is the Senior Director of Engineering and Architecture at JPMorgan Chase, and holds 6 patents covering subjects such as AI data quality, cloud cost management, multi-teacher LLM distillation, and model self-healing. In 2024, James led a team that won the FST Tech Award for Best Financial Services Team, migrated 53 apps to AWS, published 2 IEEE papers on LLM blockchain security, and presented 14 keynotes, including one at UCSD. He holds a master's degree from Computer Science Department of Harvard University and in finance from the City University in New York. In this episode, we discussed the importance of trust in AI, particularly in the context of blockchain and decentralized finance, ethical considerations in finance and challenges faced in ensuring responsible AI use. We also explored the evolving role of human experts in managing AI technologies and advice for organizations adopting AI. And now for this week's episode of The Brave Technologist. James, welcome to The Brave Technologist. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, Luke. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I've been really kind of looking forward to this interview and having this discussion. Why don't we, kind of set it up for the audience? Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you kind of found your way to working where you're working now?
Certainly. So, my faith and my family helped me with the basics of character, and that helped me in all the usual ways. And from there, I've had more recently some success developing responsible AI from the trust perspective. I found that what responsible AI boils down to is AI that you can trust. So if you think about, for example, when you hire a person to do a job, you'd like to trust them to do that job. And similarly, with the AI, what I would like to do is interview this LLM that I'm going to be using by asking it questions. If I like the answers, then I'll do a background check. And if the background check goes well, that's good as well. For example, how was the LLM trained and what does it do with your data? You can ask it for references. You can see the experience of others, right? So those are all the similar kind of trust factors. Overall, the LLM is doing something that a human used to do. So you'll want the number one thing that you want from humans, which is you want to trust them.
Interesting. No, that's really a cool perspective. I think, and on that note, kind of, what do you see as some of the early biggest benefits from AI for the industry or your industry in particular?
Well, so again, I like the AI that you can trust, and I've been working, for example, on some blockchain papers. Blockchain is like ground zero for trust issues. Because in blockchain, there's a lot of malfeasance that goes on. Many of us know about the Sam Bankman-Fried challenges. And so some of the papers that I've worked on have been working towards, for example, establishing trust scores in decentralized finance projects, that sort of thing.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that's a really good point because a lot of noise and things kind of get lost in that noise in the blockchain space. But that is ultimately what it kind of comes down to, is having this, having this transparent kind of means of doing finance. It's awesome. I think. Do you want to anything that you want to go into detail around that DeFi side or the blockchain side that? We have our interest
Absolutely.
has our audience has a pretty good interest in crypto and things like that too, so it might find it pretty interesting.
Who doesn't?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
That's fascinating. So, for example, one thing that we're looking at is the smart contracts and the decentralized finance projects around them, and trying to combine the perspectives of looking at code vulnerabilities and like there's looking at code vulnerabilities, looking at suspicious transactions, anomalous price changes to the smart contracts, social media scam sentiment, that sort of thing. So if we make 4 LLMs to look at from those 4 different perspectives, and we get a better viewpoint and a better idea of whether this is a scam, then that's one project that I worked on. And then I gave a trust factor. By the way, I worked with Kennesaw State University, so it wasn't just me. I had a couple of friends. It's always a team effort. And
Sure.
These couple of factors, by the way, anomalous price changes, social media sentiment hadn't been looked at before. That was very helpful, and helped us put a trust factor on a DeFi project. And that's very good. Then you can know whether you want to use this project and whether you want to take smart contracts from it. So we like that very much. The kind of thing that we can do also from multiple perspectives is if we use LLM distillation, which may be what's going on with a DeepSeek, by the way. LLM distillation is this idea that you can go out and you can take a hyperscaler's LLM, and so OpenAI, think like that, Gemini, et cetera, et cetera. You take one of those LLMs and you ask it some questions, and you get the results, and you save the results in a training data set. And then you take that training data set and you train your own smaller local model, which you don't have to pay for every single call to one of these hyperscalers. And it runs faster and it runs locally and it's always up. All of these are wonderful facts, and it can be cheaper. So you can see that some of these other LLMs that we're hearing in the news right now may be a lot cheaper working that way, not training with billions of NVIDIA dollars worth of bits.
When does the work take place on these papers? Just so the audience can get kind of an idea of the timing around that.
You mean like I published a paper? I had to go to Denmark and give the paper last summer, so in August last summer.
On the blockchain work that you were doing,
yes.
or that you were. Was that recently, or
I think I went to an IE conference and I presented the paper in Copenhagen.
Yeah, because I think like one thing that we're pretty involved in this space, and I think it's such a cool thing to hear that you're touching on the social element of it along with the vulnerability side too. Because I mean, like having these smart contracts out there in this space, like when something goes wrong, it can go very wrong, and the auditing is kind of like marketing in a lot of cases, right? Like so much of this is when you have that transparency, and then you have this like social layer of people talking and sleuthing and all of that stuff. So looking at it from that perspective is really cool. And I think that, it seems to be a perception around, institutions like the JPMorgan that it's not as embedded or working on these types of things. So it's super cool to hear that you all have been looking at this from that lens, because I have a feeling like a lot of our audience isn't even aware of that. So it's really interesting. Really interesting.
Morgan's famous for the Onyx project, which is a big blockchain project.
Very cool. Very cool.
About it online.
Very cool. So aside from the trust and some of those benefits, what are some of the challenges that you're seeing in the industry and in some of your work?
Well, challenges again keep coming down to the trust, I think. Beyond that, it just becomes culture change and skill set for delivery. I could tell you about sort of just the very basic building blocks that we run into, for example, with chatbots. So chatbots, as you know, now, again, a little bit trust oriented, is that the chatbots represent your company as they speak. So we run into some problems if they give away something for $1 or they give away something that's not part of your policy to give away. And that can happen by accident or because of nefarious actors, either way, or somebody trying to embarrass you by getting out certain results that they put in the news. All of these things are challenges with the chatbots. So we try to ensure that the chatbots are giving only approved type answers. Yeah? And I'll just go over like how that can happen. A technology called, to get approved answers, a technology called RAG, retrieval augmented generation. This is a very key technology these days. What that does is we take pre-approved documents full of information and we put these documents into something called a vector database. It's chopped up pieces of the document. So then when somebody searches for something, the search is turned into a number, if you will, called an embedding or a vector. And that's compared to the embedding or vector that's of the chopped up document. And it finds those two things, the piece of the document, the chunk from the document, and the question, and it compares the numbers. And if the numbers are the same, if the vector numbers are the same, similar, I should say, close, they're close in this n-dimensional vector space, they call it. If they're close, then that's a hit, and it returns that answer. And it returns the exact answer from the chunk of the exact pre-approved document. So you're not just getting random answers from a hyperscaler's LLM is trained on the whole internet. So it could get the answer. It could be drawn from anywhere on the internet. Lord knows what's there. It's much better if you have a pre-approved set of documents, and the answers are going to be drawn from there. And that's how the RAG documents are honing in on that. Additionally, if I may,
no, please. That's why we're here, man. Just go deep. I love it.
All right. So going a little deep with that. Additionally, is the concept of having a firewall or guardrails around the LLM. So it means that just as you have a firewall on your internet at home, and it's especially keeping things from coming in, and it may keep things from going out, right? Like probably at your company, at JPMorgan, for example, I cannot send personal information outside the network. It picks that up and notices that, it blocks it. You can't send the client list out of the company, that sort of thing. And it's also blocking bad things coming in. You want the same with LLM. The prompts coming in should be reviewed. And this right there, it could shut down certain prompts. We detect this prompt is a nefarious prompt. So that shut down the prompt on the way in. Then you get an answer out of your approved documents, like I said, a chunked answer that's approved. And then it will modify the answer slightly just to make it sound like it's conversational, right? Not just like bam, bam, search result. It should be a little conversational. So it might be a couple of words tweaked here or there. Something could go wrong. So on the back end, you want to have firewall again, guardrail again, to review the answer, what's coming out, and ensure that nothing bad goes out. Otherwise, block it again.
And it's all happening in just this like flash of time, right? Like a very, very short.
It's all like this.
Yeah, exactly. No, and I mean, just to kind of drill down, because the trust keeps coming up, right? Like, would you recommend for folks that are, have teams that are getting into AI, like, is trust something they should be training members of their team on? Is there, I mean, because you mentioned like checking policies and things like that, like how much of this is technology related versus like training and teams and kind of like education?
It's culture. It's culture.
Yeah.
Because you can think about what, good people, good people, right? And it's the same thing with the LLM. The LLMs that you're dealing with, they're part of now your team culture and your team values, and things like that. It goes right to the core of who you are. Are you going to let a person like this or an LLM like that work with you?
Interesting. I think how do we get in? Let's get into the ethical side, especially around finance, right? Like, how do you kind of look at ethical considerations or approach them when it comes to finance with AI?
Well, so we already at JPMorgan, and I believe at most institutions like us, already have some core values, and we already have experts in certain areas like privacy and security. And these are key aspects already there. So what I'm trying to express here, and forgive me if I'm hammering it home a little too, very heavy-handedly, is that the LLM is not something new. It seems real new because it's new technology. But what we're asking it to do is something that humans have always, in the main, is that we're asking it to do something that humans would have done. I get that, of course, there's some things that it can do that humans could have never done. But even then, it's more along the lines of it's doing things that human couldn't do because it would take humans too long. But if we were going to apply 1,000 humans to this job every day, how would we expect them to behave? We want the LLM to behave that way.
Got it. Okay. So, like, are there any specific kind of like, I guess, ethical considerations or areas that you focus in on in the world of finance? I mean, I've had people, for example, that work in public policy or in a lot of like civics and in academia and things like that. That they have certain things that they are kind of like, okay, we want to make sure that we're not employment forms aren't getting false positive because of some weird parameter that's set or something like that. Like when you're looking at this from a finance perspective, like is there anything that you all really zone in on around ethics?
We're concerned most about the false negatives.
Okay.
So we call that in AI terms, we call that recall. And that's it. And we can use a rouge score to find that, or a blue score to find the precision. So in AI, there's machine learning and there's LLM, but either way, you could have precision and recall from something very confusing called a confusion matrix. Okay, you look that up. And precision is the one that says every time I give you a result, the result better be right. I don't care if you miss some number of results. Just always give me good results. Now, what's an example of that? If I am a financial advisor and I'm going to be calling clients and suggesting something to them, I always want it to be right. I always want to suggest a product that's suitable for them and good for them and that they would like to buy. I always want to be right. I want to have very good, what they call precision about that. And if you don't suggest to call somebody or other, and it would have been good to call them, it's okay. Just don't send me to call the wrong client and propose the wrong thing to the wrong client.
Right.
That's the precision angle. Now, say on the other side is the recall angle. The recall one is I don't want to miss anything. I'm in compliance. I don't want to miss any compliance problems. It would be very bad if we were to miss a compliance problem. Yeah. Or leaving the world of finance for just momentarily. I'm a doctor. I'm looking at the X-ray. I don't want to miss the cancer.
Right. Sure.
So that's the recall aspect. So you can tune for one or the other. I happen to be in compliance actually. So a lot of the governance and so forth that I go through when I try to roll out an LLM is looking at whether I have perfect recall. I get a lot of questions. And very interestingly, how it goes is they say, how's your recall? How do you know that you didn't miss anything? So then we'll say, listen, we've looked at the last year's worth of data or some very long period of time, and a human being has combed over it, and the machine combed over it, and the machine got the same or better results over this entire period of time. And that's great. And the first time this happened to me, by the way, and I went through the governance and I thought, score, I'm done here, Lou. But then it's actually even a higher bar than that. Then they go on and they say, but what about sustainability? I says, what's sustainability? They say sustainability means that your machine is working for you right now, but how do you know that it's still working 6 months from now? In a year from now. I said, what do you mean? Why won't it keep working? And they say it's more like a car than the other kinds of rules-based software that you've been working with all your life, James. And I says, really? It says, yes. The data can drift on you, for example. Or if you're using an LLM from a hyperscaler, the LLM itself can change. So and even if you're using the same exact LLM with the same version and so on, they can do an update. And they're tuning the parameters back there, they're tuning the weights, and it's changing the results that you're getting back.
Yeah, well, sure. I mean, the data updates too, right? Like in the just the data gets fresh too over time, I would imagine, and that impacts
data can change. We're always buying another company. Here's an example of how you could visualize. So we've got all of these accounts, and we train on one set of accounts. But if we were to buy another company and get their accounts, now the shape of the data has changed.
Yeah, definitely.
And maybe our model will behave differently, and we'll have to retrain. So it's very important that we are doing something called model monitoring. And that's part of your MLOps and so on. So we're monitoring the results. We should have some KPIs that we're expecting, and we should be monitoring to ensure that we're always hitting those KPIs. And if we drop below some threshold, then we want to have an alert. That basically means retrain the model. Ideally, self-heal the model.
And I would imagine too, you have to stay really tuned into the navigating kind of the regulatory space and the latest on that front regionally too, right? Like how is that navigating that with emerging tech? I mean, because you've got like this background in crypto and the blockchain side, which has been kind of a regulatory nightmare to navigate the past X amount of time. But on the AI side too, it's really emerging as far as like people's awareness of it and it hitting the rubber hitting the road, so to speak. How is that from the compliance side? You spend a lot of time educating different parts of the company around this, or how, from your point of view, like how is it navigating through all that?
Well, there's a number of different things to do. One is to go through many steps of governance and have many pairs of eyes reviewing, trained people to review anything that you put in production. Another thing to do is minimize what you put in production.
Right.
Right? So that sounds funny at first, but you can imagine, like when you first get started, typically with rolling out AI in your company and doing a lot of internal build and so forth, you might have everybody having at it, and then you start to get duplication, for example, over time. Where 309,000 people work at JPMorgan. So you can imagine that not everybody knows each other. Not everybody knows every project that everybody's working on, right? So one of the challenges is we set up actually its own set of governance is to have an inventory of all the models that are there so that we know what's there and start to reduce the footprint of what's there. So it's very helpful if you have one document processing application versus 5 or 10 that are all doing the same thing, and therefore you could have 5 or 10 times as many errors.
Right.
Or bugs, or issues. Right?
Yeah.
Minimize that minimizes your regulatory footprint 5 or 10 times what I just shared, right?
Totally. Yeah. Different policies for each and whatnot. Yeah. And potential for things to leak or whatever.
And then it works just like anything else. You have lines of compliance, defense, and so forth, and governance before anything goes forward. There's a lot of different governance depending on what you're doing. For example, they have different determinations of whether this is called an analytical tool, whether this is an LLM, or whether this LLM is sending data outside the firm, or whether it's been running locally within JPMorgan, whether this LLM uses data in different regions. The regional aspect is very important. Every country has its own rules. So that's incredibly critical, and it's very challenging to understand. Sometimes I find for myself the path of least resistance is to deploy the LLM only in the US.
Got it.
In the first go, right? Like figure out what's going on in country X and make a mistake for potentially less gain.
Yeah, or something's like not really clear, right? And better to be safe and until you get that clarity, so to speak.
It's always better to be safe. The overarching thing is be safe. When in doubt, be safer. Yeah,
no, that's great.
There's more to think of than my application that's going live, right? There's a lot more to think of than my feature. There's in the entire JPMorgan, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a really great point. And I think it's smart that you're kind of presenting it that way too, because there is a lot more kind of mindfulness you kind of have to have with these things, given the types of engagement that you have with them, right? And the different types of data that are going in and out of them and all that. So no, that's great. I think, there's a lot of talk around kind of prompt engineering and different types of ways that humans are going to be interacting with these tools. How do you see the role kind of human experts evolving as AI becomes more prevalent in finance and just kind of in the general work life?
Well, the way things are going, it seems, is that humans will always be in the loop. And the humans, though, I think of them more as being managers now. So everybody's going to be a manager. No more individual contributors. Everybody's going to be a manager of a team of LLM agents is my reading of the tea leaves.
Yeah. That's a good bit. And in that vein too, I mean, you mentioned agent, agentic is definitely getting a lot more attention now. Are you seeing applications of agentic AI that are really interesting in your world right now, or is it still something people are kind of just testing and learning with?
Of Gen AI?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Or agentic. I mean, like agents being used in addition to
For sure. So the way things are moving in the agents, I would say, is both in the chatbots, say, and then also in software engineering. I see a lot of discussion and progress of moving towards end-to-end solutions that are connected. So take software, since this is the technology show. The Brave technologist, right? So if you're a Brave technologist, you may work with the SDLC, Software Development Lifecycle. And there you're going to have requirements and build and test and deploy and so forth, and operate. So throughout this life cycle, you can have an agent for each section of the life cycle that does that bit. You can have one agent that makes the requirements, another agent that verifies that the requirements are good, another agent that turns the requirements into test cases, another agent that takes those test cases and turns them into code that passes those test cases, and so on and so forth, right? Like that, at the end of that, you have one person who's managing it, and if it gets stuck anywhere along the line, generating the code, say there's a problem generating the code doesn't compile, or that you raise a PR and the person feels that it's got a security flaw in it, so it rejects the PR. There can be like humans in there checking things and rerunning a stage, but I'm thinking of it going from step to step to step to step. It's like an assembly line, and the agents are the workers on the assembly line doing their bit at each step of the SDLC, and the human foreman can jump in and like stop the assembly line when it goes wrong, or restart it, or give some advice, or that sort of thing that you would imagine. That's how it can work in software engineering. Chatbot. Would you like to talk about Chatbot?
Yeah, let's go for it. I mean, yeah, I'm down to let's dig into that side of it too.
Chatbot might work like this. With Chatbot, by the way, Chatbot I would say does work like this at many of the big chatbots that we know online, right?
Yeah.
How are they working? It's first there's an orchestrating LLM. So that's the first agent. It's the person who just like a person, the operator. It's the operator. So that orchestrator, they take your request or your question, and these days like a question is it can be sort of end to end with these agents, right? It'll say, do you can you get me a ticket on an airline or something? And it'll say, yes, I already know this and that about you. Would you like to leave on this time and that time? And you say yes. And it says, okay, and then an agent will go and like actually do the work of getting you the ticket, charging you, sending you a bill, giving you the information, do all those different things that might have been a few different steps previously of different programs, maybe with humans in between and so forth. The agentic architecture is this idea of, from my perspective, of going end to end and combining multiple steps that perhaps used to be individual steps with human in between.
It sounds like it could be like, a huge benefit, especially on the finance side, with people and everything from, managing budgets to trying to kind of look at like what different options. I mean, the markets are so big now, right? Like there's so many different options out there and even these new ones, right? It's interesting with your background too in the blockchain space. I mean, you've seen how difficult it can be for adoption, right? Like, so it seems like some of these things could be very helpful for getting additional broader adoption and educating people along the way and helping them out with the parts of the process too. I would imagine. Are you kind of seeing, or how are you seeing kind of the next phase of crypto and AI converging from your point of view? It can be anecdotal or whatever. It doesn't have to be anything you're actually working on, but just kind of curious.
Yeah, next days of crypto. Well, I think the biggest thing is just the regulations around both crypto and AI have been less firm. That's one of the reasons why it's so risky to turn out either one. You don't know where you'll end up later, right? And to invest in either one and spend years working on either one and put money into it, either way, right? And why we want to minimize what we're doing. I think once the rules of the road around both are become more clear, then we'll be better off, right? And that would be like we mentioned one thing about the global consistency. There's some level of global consistency about basic things like money laundering, right? I know that there's some broke countries, but to a large degree, something like money laundering is well understood in similar regulations around the world, or in countries that are close to the U.S. And we want the same for our technology. Right. Which, by the way, is going to be governing our finance and so forth, right, and our money. So because of that, it's very good to have similar rules. Right now, I would say, yes, clearly, the privacy rules and so forth in Europe are a lot different. The AI rules are less clear. Some things are less friendly to business too. Having any rules at all is the most friendly to business. Like consistency is the most friendly to business, but also some rules are sort of there to say like we don't care if you make profits, or we don't care if makes any. Some rules are just kind of like extra things, hoops to jump through. You could call it.
Sure. No, and I think that's a really good point about the global consistency, right? Because it's not like this is starting from zero either, right? Like the World Wide Web's been around for a long time. People have been using protocols globally. These things, there's examples out there, and I think that like it is interesting. The rules of the road are good to have, and there's a lot of commonality too from thing to thing, and that's super interesting. I mean, for people or whether they're in businesses or kind of getting into the space themselves, do you give any advice for folks that are coming into the space around adopting AI technology, or any advice for those people that are in organizations? I know we talked trust earlier and things like that, but any other advice you might have for folks that are kind of maybe mandated to do things with AI now and are trying to kind of find their way?
Sure. Well, one of the first things that many teams and many organizations, I think, are grappling with is along the lines of, is this AI transformation we're going to go through, is this something that's an emergency? Mm-hmm. And because we're going to be disrupted by other AI players, and we feel that sort of level of pressure that the risk of AI is less than the risk of being disrupted by AI.
Right.
There's that. Versus another aspect would be is another lens that you folks put on it is they say AI is just another technology. Before this, it was cloud. Before that, it was data strategy. This, that, and the other thing. And this is just yet another technology, and we have to look at the business case for using this technology. We have to do a cost-benefit analysis of every single rollout, right? And things should be completely controlled that way. And that, of course, will have a tendency to stifle some level of innovation, right? Mm-hmm. Versus the other folks who are like, we better innovate. We got to be there fast. We need to be at the forefront. So weighing those two aspects and understanding if we're going to be innovating grass from the bottom up and let everybody everywhere have some level of freedom to innovate and innovate quickly, or it's going to be much more top-down driven. We're going to invest in a few big bets and we're going to keep things controlled and maybe make a smaller footprint to reduce risk, maybe make a smaller footprint to reduce costs in some way, make sure that we're not doing duplication. If you do duplication, you'll get more innovation and more things will pop faster. Right? There'll be some level of competition even in the company. Best things will come up. But, there's some duplication of cost as well, right?
Sure.
Duplication of risk as well.
Yeah.
But these are things that go through the organization's head in order to decide, where they're going. And I think there's a continuum and people probably start someplace in the continuum and move towards the center. Usually in my anecdotal experience, I find, some companies are starting out in the very conservative or the very aggressive, and then they move towards the middle over time.
Yeah. It seems like everybody's like, there's definitely around the hype cycle around this too, where it's like, okay, all the executives are coming in. Oh, let's get the AI stuff everywhere, and everyone's like, well, where's the fit? And so trying to kind of find that fit, right? And I think that's a really good approach. You've been super gracious for your time with your time today. And is there anything we didn't cover that you want to let our audience know about or want to put some light on while we got you?
The next big thing is quantum, so let's look out for that.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Awesome. And where can people find your work online or reach out to say hi?
Hey, you can find me on LinkedIn, so that would be really great. James Massa.
Excellent. Well, James, I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your insight with us. I know our audience probably learned a lot, and I'd love to have you back too sometime to kind of check back in on things and see how things are going.
Oh, that'd be great, Luca. I had such a wonderful time. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks. Thanks for listening to the Brave Technologist podcast. To never miss an episode, make sure you hit follow in your podcast app. If you haven't already made the switch to the Brave browser, you can download it for free today at brave.com and start using Brave Search, which enables you to search the web privately. Brave also shields you from the ads, trackers, and other creepy stuff following you across the web.